Jacob, thanks for coming on. People who don't know, Jacob is the co-founder of a YouTube channel that I used to watch a lot and envy as they had better quality than us, but we're doing similar stuff. It was called Wisecrack. Jacob, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Nice to see you.
Yeah, man. So you recently sold. I'm sure Ben has heard the story, but this is the part that I'm curious about for selfish reasons. What can you tell us about the mindset that went into like, it's time for me to leave this project? And also, as much as you can, though, I understand if you can't get specific about the financial way that a YouTube channel is sold. Because I imagine if I tried to sell my YouTube channel to anyone, they'd be like, you're going to have to stay forever because you're not my indentured servant in making these videos.
No, especially because you left.
Yeah.
Right?
I did. So like we, you know, stepping back a little bit, like we wanted to, when we created Wisecrack, we wanted to create a channel that where we were sort of in the background. So Jared never really wanted to be a talent on screen, but he did out of a necessity eventually. You know, YouTube wants to feel almost like you're in the green room with somebody, like you're hanging out with somebody. It's not like a presentation or a film, which is what Jared and I originally wanted to do, is to make movies together. So eventually Jared did come front and center and did present himself and did become a host on the channel. But that sort of entangles a bit with when you sell a company or sell a brand or sell a channel. A big part of the value is like, is there a brand there, or is it really just a personality or an individual? And if it's an individual, it's kind of hard to sort of step away eventually and not be entangled with the product or with the sale. So
Ben can leave, but I can't.
Yeah, right, exactly. So Ben has the out.
Could Jared leave, or is he still there?
Jared actually did just leave just recently, like within the past few months.
He was more so like the face to the viewers of Wisecrack.
Right. And look, in every way, Jared is the Wisecrack brand in terms of the content. So Jared, early on when we started the company and started the brand, so like I said, we wanted to be filmmakers. We came to make movies. We realized that YouTube was going to be a way faster platform to actually make stuff, get it made, have an audience. You guys know what that's like. And once you have that first success, it's almost like tasting blood. Like it's like, wow, this is so exciting. We can keep doing this. So we built the channel, but early on, I think we were trying to find our way. I was a tech entrepreneur. I was a guy who had worked for a software company before, was living in London, was helping expand the software business across Europe. And I was very business oriented and very technical. Jared was a real filmmaker. I mean, he had gone to film school. He was working in LA. He was studying scripts. He knows cinema better than anyone on earth that I know. And so when we arrived together, made a decision to actually join forces and create something, whether it be movies or TV shows or whatever, and eventually became YouTube. I think the beginning was just us figuring out what are our roles. Like I thought I was going to be a writer director. I think Jared thought he was going to be a writer director. But then, someone had to do the business side of things, and someone had to do the scripting, and someone had to do the editing. And so we kind of eventually landed, and it turned out that I was really a great producer, a great business guy, a really good, strong, like organizational person, an operations person. Jared was a really strong content person. Mm-hmm. And this is before we even knew what the channel was going to be or what we were going to create. But so when it became to, because Jared was in the role of creating the content and running content, really it became his baby in a lot of ways. Like the content that's Wisecrack's content is a reflection of what he cares about, what he knows. Yeah. So I take almost no credit on the content side of things.
Did you both try to make content and you just were like, oh, his is better? Like, how did you find your roles?
Yeah, so we created a number of series and things before. So I created a show before we even launched Wisecrack that I thought was really funny. It was a comedic show. It did fairly well. And I liked it, but then, and I found like I'd kind of captured lightning in a bottle at first. Like it was really cool. It was my first time making anything. And I was like, wow, I'm really good at this. And then when it came to like doing the second and third and fourth, I was like, oh, I'm really bad. Like I had no patience really for learning how to script properly and figure out storytelling. And it just wasn't, when it came down to it, I was much more interested in like learning how to work the cameras and how to figure out the microphones and how to get the channel built and how to grow the audience and how to, launch the YouTube and do partnerships. Like I was just much more interested in those pieces. And I would see that I'd bring Jared along for a partnership call or a partnership meeting. I remember like we had meetings with YouTube. YouTube pulled us in like, you guys are doing really cool stuff. I'd bring Jared along. I'd be thrilled afterward. Jared would be like, I am so tired. I need to sleep all day. Like it's just like the introvert extrovert thing. And
match.
I've become more introverted with time, but at the time I just realized there are certain things that I'm really good at, certain things he's really good at. And I just realized he had the patience and the sensibility, honestly, for more popular content. Like the stuff that he made resonated with many more people and was much more accessible. My stuff was kind of like fringe, and I was much more into like, I want to make art film. It wasn't really the kind of stuff that it wasn't going to make a good business.
And did you guys have a vision for it in terms of, we're going to be huge, we're going to focus on money, we're going to focus on views? Was it meant to be a lifestyle business and the goal was to just sit in a hammock for most of the day? Like, what was the vision, if you even had one?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think early on, our vision, when we came together for the first time, Jared and I just wanted to make movies. And I think it was almost like a very romantic sort of endeavor. The idea was, we're just going to create the really good stuff. We're going to make, the Koan brothers kind of material. We're going to do stuff that's off the beaten path, but really interesting and artistic and creative. So money wasn't even involved. And I took the leap away from the software business to do something artistic and creative. So I just came here to make art. And Jared definitely did the same thing. He didn't pursue this career for money, and money is, Jared used to laugh, like, if I made $1 million, I would just set it all on fire. Like, that'd be funny to me. And I was like, don't do that. Give it to me.
Wait, and did he set it on fire?
He did not set it on fire.
What a hypocrite.
Sell out.
We sell out. We laugh now that he and I switched places. Like, I became a Buddhist and very, very, compassionate, and really have slipped away from the money being the priority. And Jared is more like, no, I think that's necessary to be kind of independent in this world. But we just sort of we shared a lot of our characteristics with one another.
Sure.
But anyways, we started for art, and then desperation kicked in. I mean, I was a bit fine financially because I had come off of a big software gig, and I'd worked in the software industry, and we had a big exit, and we IPO'd, and it was I had a very different background, but Jared was here as a filmmaker. I convinced him to say, like, step away from your day job. Let's just make movies together, and let's start making web series and stuff. And eventually it came to a point where, like, it was desperate times. I mean, there were really desperate moments there where it was touch and go, where Jared was like, look, I'm down to like $500 and that's it. Like, it's not like I've got a backup plan here. Like, I've got to start taking gigs. So Jared was doing, script reviewing processes, like script coverage. He was doing freelance work here and there just to make ends meet. We got a couple of...
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
The parallels are ridiculous.
I was going to say, your story is bizarrely...
Serious? Yeah, wow.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Who's the rich one?
That's this guy, dude.
Oh, hey,
so wait,
no wonder we get along. I'm kidding.
Dude, I was in Wall Street. I did 2 years investment banking, 2 years private equity, then came to do this.
Right.
So I had been paid...
a lot of money.
I had living in, and then we moved to Brazil, by the way. So I mean, in Brazil, you're talking 10 years before I had to work again, because you just have no cost of living. Charlie got down to his last $500.
Oh, I got lower than that. I withdrew I worked for a year and a half, and they had a 401k that they put money in, and that I didn't put any money in, but I took it out with the penalty and just got hammered because I needed that.
Early liquidated it,
dude. I Airbnb'd my bedroom. I was having strangers literally bringing women back to have sex in my bedroom, and couldn't say really anything to them because I needed the 5-star rating, and I needed to re-rent that bedroom to somebody else the
and
next
you were SAT tutoring on the side while we were doing this business.
Yeah.
So
whatever it takes.
It's crazy how similar the story is.
Right. And those desperate,
Crazy.
like, I think probably same thing with you, Ben. Like, you see your friend in those dire straits, and it's not like you're going to give him money, but you're also like, okay, we got to reorient this thing to actually work.
No, I got more stressed for Charlie's financial situation than Charlie did.
Yeah.
I was worried about
too.
him. And so I was putting money into things. We weren't going 50-50. I was just like funding things to try to go to mentorship things or masterminds. I was like, we got to get this going. He was cool as a cucumber. He never seemed stressed at all.
What's funny is it can't get worse than that.
Yeah.
And it can for some people that live in Africa.
Certainly. Yeah.
But for me, I was like, you know what? I'm already a failure. And like, my mom and dad are going to keep me fed. I've got Goya beans and I can sleep on their couch. So like, luckily I know where my floor is. I have a middle-class floor of just middle-class failure.
Yeah, guy living in your parents' basement.
And that's where I am.
I guess that's probably true. Like, I don't think, Jared wasn't going to get destitute, but it was, like if you ever have to pack up and leave LA to go home, I think it's a big mark. It's hard. That's a really tough pill to swallow.
Yeah,
it hurts.
And I think you're right. Like I was just
ego.
concerned. Like, I was like, okay, shit. Like I think the reality set in when I heard Jared say things like that, like look at my bank balance, like we're low. This is critical. We got out of, it was a miracle. I think we got like a small grant from YouTube to do more episodes of a show that we were working on at the time called Thug Notes. And that helped like pay some bills. And then we got an advertising deal with LG. They had seen some of our shows and they gave us a deal that helped like literally just pay bills for a few months. It was something like I wouldn't ordinarily take advertising work. Jared probably hated that kind of work. But we needed it. We needed to figure that out. And I think that's quickly when I said, okay, Jared, trust me. Let me figure out, like, we have to turn this into a business. Like, if we want to sustain ourselves as artists, we're going to have to figure that out. And for me, the path that I knew was we can create a company, we can fundraise, and that will allow us to pay ourselves a very small, modest salary. I think we're paying ourselves $35,000 a year. Once we had already raised almost $1 million, like we paid ourselves very modest salaries. I thought
pre-sale fundraised for your YouTube channel.
Yeah. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's maybe that's news. Yeah. So we raised 2 rounds of funding. We raised about $2 million all in over the course of running that brand. And so that took us like, look, at the beginning, like you, Ben, I put money into the company. I put my own money to finance some of the first shows. And over time I was able to pay myself back for those debts. But we created really cool things, got initial traction with our own money to see where we could get. And once we had enough traction and interest, plus, some of my business experience, I was able to go out to friends, family, and angel investors to get angels to invest. And we raised money.
So what were you raising on at the time? Because it sounds like the business wasn't making cash. Was it on your reputation? Was it on your view count? How did you tell someone, oh, this is worth you putting in $500,000 to get some small percentage of it? Yeah.
There's a combination. So the traction was great. We had millions of views by the time. So we came, Jared and I moved to LA in summer of 2012. So from 2012, our first hit was the winter of 2012. We had our first hit on our hands. And then we kept making content. We launched Thug Notes in 2013 with Greg Edwards and a really cool scholar named Joe Salvaggio. So we made this really cool show called Thug Notes that grew and exploded quite a bit. YouTube got interested and gave us a little bit of funding. I can't remember the amount was, maybe $50,000, but it allowed us to keep making Thug Notes, but also helped us then launch 8-Bit Philosophy, which was our philosophy show, teaching philosophy through video games. And so at that point, we had 3 shows that were all 3 were hits. And we got approached by Random House, the publisher, to create the Thug Notes book. And that was a pretty big deal. I don't know if I can share them out, but it was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars deal. Wow. So having that sort of promissory note of like, here's this book deal we've got YouTube has invested, we have 3 hit shows. Like, we are a format making kind of machine. Like, we're a company that can make really cool, thoughtful, educational content that's funny, that resonates, that gets tons of viewership. And
how was Jared running out of money if you guys got $300,000? Was your content extremely expensive to produce?
Well, we don't get it all up front. First of all, like, so the book deals, and I should say the Dire Straits came before we even launched Thug Notes. That was more like 2012, early 2013. We didn't launch Thug Notes until the summer of 2013. So we were talking about right before then. It was sort of like, and we were making that show with our own money. So the book deal didn't come through, I think, until the end of 2013. And the point is, you're living kind of hand to mouth for so long on these deals. Like, you get a big book deal, you've got to write the book, and that takes a year or 2 years to write the book. I think we did it much faster than that, but it took a long time, and you're not getting the money right away. And for example, the money from YouTube, I think 100% of that went straight to Greg, to the writers, to the production. It goes quick. We just didn't have money. There was it was either we were going to bootstrap it or grow it.
That's such a different business model. It's so interesting.
Well, we can discuss this in a moment. I want to hear more. But one of the initial differences I'm hearing is that you guys, like, you're a producer, is what I'm hearing. You've got cameras that are good and on-screen talent that isn't you and your partner.
Yeah, how much was a video cost roughly?
I thought we were like a miracle. The first episodes of Thug Notes, I want to say, cost like $200 or $300 a piece, but that's not paying anyone like a legal rate. I mean, it was paying, it was like kind of like friends and family just giving us favors. Like, okay, we can let you borrow our house as a set. Yeah. Our camera person is doing it for fun because we're trading favors, and that's a big way of how early Hollywood works. What's so interesting is I loved it. It was like Boogie Nights. Like you come to town, everyone's sort of hustling and working, and but you're the camera guy. Like at the time he had no work, no prospects. He was 20 something years old, and now all of a sudden he's working in the industry, and he's he's working on big shows, and we all help each other out, and it's like rising tides.
Cool.
But yeah, like I said, we didn't want to be front and center, so we wanted to produce shows. We wanted to have characters. We wanted to create formats. The camera was a camera that I bought myself personally that we used, and we literally still use to this day. It was a Canon 5D that we've been using now for 9 years or something. So yeah,
good enough. But I have a Logitech webcam. We just upgraded from 720 to 1080.
Let me come be your producer.
We went, dude, please. Oh my gosh. I mean, Justin is gonna. The podcast is actually solid.
You guys have good mics there. I like to see the Shure SMB 8s
Joe
or whatever
Rogan,
they are.
man. Well, what mic does Joe Rogan use?
This is the business that got started after the successful business. So it's like, oh, should we put a couple $1,000s into equipment? Yeah, but with Charisma on Command's like, let's get a $50 camera and get this thing going.
But you don't need it. That's the thing. Like that's the hilarious joke of YouTube is that the quality is not necessary, and in some ways it smells bad. Like it looks bad to look too good, too glossy. So there's always an element for Jared and I of like, we want it to be like high quality production value, great writing, and the writing is really that's the magic. The production, if it looks too good and too slick, it's going to turn people off. Even though you can kind of emulate a really good look, it doesn't feel authentic. So Thug Notes, for example, had really crappy animations, and every show is like a little bit, I think got more polished over time as we worked with more advertisers. But yeah, we raised a round of funding. We, then started to turn it into more of a business. So the question is more like, what was the goal? I honestly think Jared and I created Wisecrack out of desperation in some ways. Like we had a creative vision for sure. BuzzFeed and Vice and Refinery 29, all these big kind of media companies and digital media companies were starting up and and raising a ton of money, and we were sort of banking on that wave. We were sort of saying we're going to be another one of those creators, but in the education space. And I think, honestly, I think if I look back, one of the things I wish Jared and I had done more of was just spend time really thinking about like, what is it that we want, not just what's going to keep us alive and float. And I think out of desperation and out of that rush to get Jared a salary and for me to be able to sustain myself and get myself paid back for some of the debts that or some of the loans that I'd made to the company, I think we just rushed to whatever was going to work. And it was, in some ways it's great. And we're here, and I don't regret it at all, but it would be nice to have thought through, like, is it about money? Is it about the views? Is it about the vision?
And how much equity did you have to give up? Was it, because I know some angel investing, they get in for 2% of the business, but then other times they'll take a pretty meaty chunk. So did you have to give up a lot of the business?
I was lucky to have good advisors and good friends from the previous company. So one of my great mentors, a guy named Brett Hurt, Brett started the web analytics industry, started a company called Coremetrics, then Bizarre Voice, now Data.World. I just asked him and a couple of other mentors from my previous company, friends of mine, and they came in as investors too. What's typical? And typical is every round of funding is typically in the ballpark of you're giving up between 10 and 30% of your company every time. And
it's a big chunk,
Yeah, but that's for the round. So if you raise $1 million, you're typically, raising on I think for that first $1 million we raised with a convertible note, which is called a convertible note. And now that's even becoming easier and easier. But a convertible note is sort of like a sense of what the valuation might be. And I think we raised $1 million on a $4.5 million valuation cap at the time. So that was roughly 25%.
Wow. So I imagine if somebody at any point, even today, that those numbers are large. If somebody had said, hey, I think your business is worth $4.5 million or $6 million or $8 million, I would feel thrilled in the moment. It's like, we're going to give you 10% of that, 20% of that. Today, I'm extremely happy that didn't happen because I don't know anybody who could have done that. And I'm very glad that Ben owns half and I own half. So I'm curious, I'm sure it felt good at the time. Do you regret selling? People often ask us about bootstrapping and fundraising. My advice is the path that I took, which is as long as you can hang on to equity? Do you have a
Yeah.
different perspective on that?
Oh God, there's no right way to go about that, but there's pros and cons. The pros are once you have the money in the bank, then you can pay yourself again a modest salary. Jared and I were paying ourselves $35,000 a year, I want to say, early on, and for us that was thrilling just to be able to say, great, I have a full-time job. I don't have to worry about moonlighting to make this thing work. So all that feels really liberating and free. You know, you have runway. You know that you can actually pay your crew and your staff and your editors. You can sleep at night. But then it creates a whole different kind of sleep because all of a sudden there's a different pressure that it starts to mount. Is like the investor's like, how's it going? What's going on? Where's our return? Where is that $1 million?
Yeah, where's the return? That's the question.
And so it introduces, so it's really a give and take. So there was a moment actually after I sold Wisecrack. We'll get into that if you have questions about what
you're out completely. Is that fair?
I'm out completely. Yeah, I'm out completely. And that was part of by design. That's what I wanted. I wanted to move on. I wanted to.
So no equity, no responsibilities.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I consult occasionally for the buyer. They're called Omnia Media, and they were owned by Blue Ant Media, and then they've just been sold to Enthusiast Gaming. So I consult occasionally, and I'm still in. What's that?
It's like a game of Pac-Man. Someone bought you, and someone bought them, someone bought them.
Everyone's
Jeff
always
Bezos owns it all.
Yeah, it's all about Jeff Bezos, right? So I work for Jeff. So yeah, it's always so. I think I've lost my train of thought there. Like I think the trade-offs. There are trade-offs. It's just if you have the opportunity in front of you, great, and it can be something you'd want to contemplate. I think in retrospect, I wonder if we should have raised later and maybe just taken our time a bit more. At the same time,
did you raise before the book deal?
We raised right after the book deal got signed. So we signed the book deal, and that was actually the great momentum that we needed to be like, look, guys, we're getting YouTube's approaching us. The book publishers are approaching us, and we're unstoppable. So come join us now at the ground floor. And it worked out. We were very, 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 very lucky that things worked out as we'd hoped, and we grew the way that we wanted to, and we built a profitable company that worked. But it's just a trade-off. I think after I sold Wisecrack, for many months I just thought like, I can't wait to build my own company where I own 100%. I don't have to give any investor updates, and I don't have to do any of that stuff. And I see many entrepreneurs who enter that phase after having like a VC-backed company. And then they sometimes go back and they can't wait to do it again. It just takes a different kind of appetite. Like when you take that check, I think at the time I thought it was free, and then I realized, oh no, there's a huge cost and a pressure, and some entrepreneurs are super up for that challenge and very excited to take the pressure and the challenge, and others are like, please make it easy. Please just let me make this something that I really love and enjoy, and keep the pressure low for a long time. Just different.
Yeah, and then when you did just sell the rest of your equity, was that something where you were feeling burnout and you went out to search for a buyer because you were ready for a new chapter? Was that someone gave you an offer you couldn't refuse? How did that happen?
That's a great question. Yeah. I wasn't burned out. Maybe I was. I don't remember it being burnout so much as like there were some really tough years. There were tough moments. So as you know, for both of you guys too, like it's not for the faint of heart to be an entrepreneur, and definitely not a digital video entrepreneur. Like it's pressure, and someone mentioned to me that it's like riding a bike with no shocks. Like you just feel every bump. And so maybe on that bike, you get some incredible views, you have some incredible highs, you see things that other people don't ever get to see, but the ride back is it's hard. Like you're just feeling all these bumps. So
can you walk me through that? Just because I'm curious if I have that experience or not. Like what bumps do you feel? Was it hard because of financial stress, or just you were working so much? Can you give me like some concrete about the bike ride?
I'll give you some examples. Like one of them was we had built up let me just give you an example. Like the quickest example is having to let people go. So we got to a team size of maybe 15 or 20 people. At some points even bigger. We had a network of 100 and some people, editors and different creatives that we worked with. And when it came down to firing people, because we had to, get down to, because Facebook changed its algorithm and we had to reprioritize, like that stuff just sort of ate me up. I mean, I'm a business guy, but I'm not robotic, and that stuff sort of hurt. And it was definitely a blow to the ego. And that was like those days that were it was like the dark nights, just like, wow, this is not something that's very fun. Or, Jared and I would certainly quarrel. It wasn't like it was super, super easy all the time when it came down to philosophically what we wanted this thing to become, or what changes we had to make, or having to focus on really popular content to feed the YouTube beast. I mean, all that was just like,
what was the biggest fight?
Probably around popularity of content. Like, I think, again, it's what's sad is that Jared and I went into this to be artists. And then as the business is growing and we've raised $2 million, we have the pressure on our backs. And now we have to go cover, the Avengers movie, and that might not be something that Jared really likes and something that I really care about either. But it's very important for the audience. It's very important for our channel and for the health. I think the other big fights were around sponsorship. I think it was a love-hate relationship. The sponsors made everything possible. At the end of the day, that was our business. And I do admire that for you guys, that you guys have a different business model. You guys are really focusing on the course. And that is another kind of regret, is I wish we had focused more on product or figured out something that our audience would want to pay for, right? Because that would have given us a lot more freedom than advertising. And so Jared and I, would probably fight around that stuff. It was like,
so someone would want to take the money because you have to pay investors, and the other person would say, I don't like this product, I don't feel comfortable endorsing it, and there'd be a tug of war there. Yeah,
it wasn't. I don't think there was any specific. If Jared didn't like an advertiser, or didn't think it was appropriate, we definitely wouldn't do it. But I just think like the fact of like, hey, like we need to fill like 100% of our videos need to be sponsored. Jared's like, that sucks. Like I don't want to have to be shilling out products all day long, and I don't want to have to be like it's going to hurt the audience and those trade-offs. Jared is. At the end of the day, he loves the brand, loves the content, loves the audience. And anytime there was a sacrifice being made, that sucked, and it wasn't just like, he wasn't just angry with me or upset at the situation. It was just, it was like an existential dread. Like, why? He's like, I would be that audience, like that guy who just commented and said that you suck and you're a sellout. He's like, that's me. Like, I believe that now because I think that's the truth.
Did you guys ever think about making something? Because that is the one, I mean, we had a fan question about this, but that's the one nice thing about Charisma University is I just feel very comfortable that it's good for people. We made it, we own it. Did you guys ever think what would be good for our audience and can we make it? Or it was just this, it's investor treadmill time. There's really not even.
Oh, no. We certainly played around with things. We did everything from merch to Patreons to private chats. We did some live events. We were actually at the end of the end, right before we sold, we built a company called Backstage Courses, which was sort of masterclass or monthly. Now you're seeing that, but it was effectively creating premium paid courses, but taught by YouTubers. So someone like Matpat teaching, how to create, how to market and how to grow your YouTube channel, or Jared teaching writing, how to write for YouTube.
Make that? Because I feel like that would have crushed
it. We made a lot of it. We built out the brand, the site. We built out the trailers. We built out the coursework. We have some really cool, amazing video that we shot too. So it was shot like masterclass. It was gorgeous. Wow. But at the end of the day, it was something that Jared really didn't want to do himself. Like he didn't really want to make the Wisecrack course because it was. I don't know. It was philosophically, again, it was like having to push and sell more things to our audience just didn't feel right at the time. But also it coincided with the sale of the company. And so we just sort of decided not to pursue that path. It was very hard. Building courses for yourself, building one course is one thing, but then doing it for tons of people. And that was super capital intensive and required minimum guarantees and talent fees and stuff.
Does Matpat have a course on how to grow a YouTube channel that I can purchase?
He does not, but we were talking to him about it. He does not. He is the master. He is so different from master.
He is so different. He is such a technical whiz and such a data diving person. Like I feel that I could learn so much from him because he's done it, one, more successfully than I have, but also so differently than I have. We're intuition based. We're like, what do you think about this title?
Well, I always, for our dynamic, I always say I'm kind of the business mind. And I think I liken Charlie to the creative genius or the Einstein. Like his shoes aren't tied, but his script is amazing. You know what I mean? So Matpat is growing from a completely different framework.
Matpat is right in the middle. He is the two. Both. He's Jekyll and Hyde. He's crazy. He's really brilliant with data. He's brilliant with marketing. I think he can walk a really fine line of he's created formats and channels and a personality and a sensibility that allows him to both do things that are technically and measurably smart and great, but also creative in a way that the audience comes along for the ride. So I remember one time, this is an example, Matt took a look at our channel. He was a great partner to us, by the way. He helped us grow quite a lot. So I owe a lot to him. But
how'd you guys get in touch?
We got in touch through, we joined Defy Media at the time before they had a huge bankruptcy.
Exploded.
But Defy Media was our MCN for a while, or representatives or something. And they were bringing us deals, but one of the things they offered was that Matpat would come give us a channel audit as part of that deal. So Matpat used to work at Defy Media. He was like just a channel manager there. And he had all these great ideas. No one listened to him. And he was like, oh, fuck it, I'm going to start my own channel. And he created The Game Theorists. So he's done fine. But anyway, he gave us an audit and he was like, oh, I see you guys released a video on Mario Goes to Therapy or something. It was like we did a show called Pop Psych, I think, at the time. And he said, I recommend that you follow Google and YouTube's structured tagging system. And the way that they structure and tag Mario is as Super Mario. So just put Nintendo Super Mario. So we put Super Mario in the title right there in the meeting. And the video went from like this, sort of went from like a flat line to like a hockey stick. And I was like, holy crap. Like, that's one thing.
Wow.
And Matt had him and Stephanie, his wife, is also brilliant too. They have a consultancy. And so anyway.
How does one learn what Google
can one learn these powers?
Yeah, they're brilliant. They do channel consulting.
Yeah, have to hit them up. But so I wanted to ask, that's an example, and you've thrown it out there a couple times. What were the big, I don't know, things that you generally did that created that general hockey stick growth? And I can't tell, is one of them interacting and learning from other creators, or is it testing a bunch of different formats? Was it raising your sponsor rate? Like, I can think of our breakthroughs, and one of them is absolutely not interacting with other creators. You're like the fourth guy that I know on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So I'm curious what it's been for, or was for you guys at Wisecrack.
For us, there were two pieces that ultimately changed the course for the channel growth. The number one was when we started to cover more popular topics. So unfortunately, this was a double-edged sword, right? It was on one side, it was great because it would introduce us to new to new audiences. It would, YouTube's the number 2 search engine in the world. So people searching for anything popular, including Star Wars, including Star Trek, including Avengers, anything of that sort, like, would bring us big audiences. So Rick and Morty became a huge anchor for us. So as that show became hugely popular, and especially hugely popular on search, we were always early results. So popular content was number one. And number two for us was collaborations. And that was people collaborating with people like Vsauce. We collabed with Matpat. We collabed with In a Nutshell. Like, when we did major collaborations and like collaborated on what the content was that we would push to them and they'd push to us, that became one of our major growth channels after our initial launches. So at first it was like, let's create series and shows that cut through the clutter, that are super unique and interesting. And then those two pieces ultimately helped us.
Never had interest in collaborating with Charisma on Command, though. Very
unusual. My email went unanswered.
Very surprising.
Was it the collaboration itself, like you just mentioned, the video, or was it the knowledge share that was most impactful?
It was the collaborations. I think the knowledge share was interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think Matpat helped us on the knowledge side of things, like changing our programming, hitting our regular cadence and schedule, how we did tagging, how we figured out titling. He helped us a lot at the time with end cards and end screens and annotations to make sure that everything that we did helped keep someone in the Wisecrack web, as he called it. So someone would come in, watch a Wisecrack video, and then every single suggested video is more Wisecrack. So they're just watching.
You guys crush that. I swear to, because you guys have a distinctive thumbnail look.
Yeah.
And if you're on a Wisecrack video, it's like, hello, suggested Wisecrack.
Right.
You guys dominate that.
That was, Matpat really trained us on how to do that right, and we were just very lucky to work with him and to have that. I think he appreciated the access to our channel because he could also see our analytics and see what was going on with us, and we got great benefit. It was a win-win for both of us.
Cool.
But then the collaborations, I think that was like kind of the tactics. But then in terms of the collaborations, it was just a matter of Matpat would do a collab, and we helped him with writing. Jared actually helped him with writing scripts, helped him with supporting his content, and in exchange, he'd help push audience to our channel. All of a sudden, you get 10,000 new subscribers in a day because he's mentioned our channel. Like things like that, where it's like those big days were really helpful for growing our audience.
Fascinating. Yeah, this is where we differ. And just for those, I'm sure some of our fans are curious. For us, I would say it was separating your and my role totally for about a year and a half, where it was like, hey, if it's a question, an email, a accounting problem, like talk to Ben. And if it's literally not writing a video, do not speak to Charlie. So I had the most.
Sorry, that's for our internal team, not for our fans.
Oh yeah,
this was.
And for everybody.
Yeah,
for everybody.
But I'm saying it's not just fan questions. It's like, hey, if you have a question about Charisma on Command, don't go to Charlie.
Yeah,
Charlie's going to be writing. It's the most important thing we do, and it's the only thing he does.
Yeah,
wow.
And so we had and it was great. I mean, Charlie,
that was our biggest jump was that year where it was just like, I have one job, and it was funny because I'm writing about charisma and I'm speaking to no one. You know, I'm like talking to no team members
on your webcam,
pulling on a wealth of information from the past.
Went into a cave, and then I would say we could give a handful of other ones, but the other one was really gaining confidence in the product. I took some time. We created our Charisma University course, and then I went back and just redid it. I thought it was good, but I was like, there's pieces I don't like, and
you redid it for the third. It was the
third or fourth time, yeah. But it just changed the tenor of my voice when I recommended it, and we have data that tracks the conversions, and they leap. The difference between, hey guys, like I made this, and I think you should check it out. And guys, I love this course. I put my heart and soul into it.
It's absolutely the fastest way to become confident.
I think you'll really like it, and I hope you decide to check it out.
That's awesome,
just incredible, and just if there is a lesson here for people listening, like. Do whatever you can to invest in your product and be able to genuinely recommend it. It was such a huge thing for us.
I think there were certain products and channels that Jared loved, and when he really believed in it, you could hear it. It was just different. It converted differently. And that's awesome. Like, I think when we were building that courses company, that courses business, Jared was like, if I'm pushing to a course on writing, I can guarantee it'll be one of the best writing courses you can take. Like I'll believe in it because it's the best that I can do. And that's so cool to hear. Like I think you see it with some of Tony Robbins' stuff before. Like he was sometimes a little like less confident, and now it's just like he does one video, it's like 500,000 people sign up in a second on these Facebook communities and groups because he believes in it. I mean, he really and it works, and you feel confident about it.
He's seen it. So I think intelligently didn't answer my original question about the exit and gave us some groundwork to get here. But now I'm curious. Was it tough at the point of the exit to remove yourself, or had you done a good job of building that apparatus? They didn't, sounds like, want you to be their indentured servant. And then tell us about like the sale, what you can about the multiple and how that is even discussed and looked at in the digital space.
Sure. Well, I'll say, so again, I built the company, I think maybe like Ben did, is that we structured it in a way where it's a system, it's a machine in a sense that I don't have to be there involved with every detail. I was super involved, very hands-on with the creative. I really cared a lot about the visual. So I worked with really cool artists and worked on the logos and the graphics and the design. I mean, that was like my baby. But aside from that, I could even step away from that. I had designers, we had teams that could handle a lot of stuff. So I wasn't required. And I built that from the beginning for a number of reasons. Number one being like, if I get hit by a bus, I want this thing to keep going. I want the brand to live on beyond me. So in a way, it was always going to be easy for me to be plucked out of this thing at any moment. It didn't really require me. It was a matter of resources. Like someone had to get paid to do all the roles that I did, but it wasn't like I was that critical. Jared was more critical, especially as he really kind of was involved in the content, was the content, led that content team. So Jared hired a number two, who's been with us for years now, Alec, who now runs all content at Wisecrack, and he's unbelievable. He's incredible. So like, that was number one, was making sure that we all had the sort of, if we get hit by a bus, we all have some backups. That was helpful.
Is that the person that makes the content now that Jared has left?
Yeah.
Alec is in charge of it?
Alec Opperman. So he runs the content team at Wisecrack, and he's managing all the scripts and all the research team and making sure that the content is what it needs to be. So for me, like, what was the big, like, come to Jesus, so to speak, of like, I want to move on. I have a really good friend of mine out in New York who just said, like, let me step back for 1 second. So first of all, our company was on the rise, doing great. We were growing like crazy, built a Facebook team and started to build other platform teams. And then in, I think it was 2018, Facebook changes its algorithm. because of Cambridge Analytica. And so all of our Facebook distribution overnight sort of died. I mean, I think it was 99% of traffic turned off for all publishers. It wasn't just for us. Wow. But that was a pretty big hit. And then you had BuzzFeed and Vice, the two biggest kahunas in the industry, missed their numbers by a third each. And that also drove like these huge shockwaves to the industry. And then there were reports of the duopoly. So all the advertising dollars, the whole vision, the whole pitch for what Wisecrack was going to do was, we're going to build huge audiences. All these advertising dollars are going to shift over to digital, and we're going to be there with big audiences to be able to capture some of that. Well, it turned out 90%, so $9 out of 10 were going straight to Facebook and to Google. They were going to the duopoly. They were going to the platforms instead of to the publishers. So all that became like, hey, we built our business predicated on advertising, not on courses or direct sales like you guys. All these elements, it was like consecutively all happened in early 2018. So we saw things were starting to crumble. And so that was a really miserable year of just trying to rush to profitability. That's where I had to fire a lot of people. That's where I had to make the company stand up on its own 2 feet. And I have a very good friend of mine in New York who said, Jacob, look, you've been at this thing for approaching 8 years now. It's doesn't have the potential that it once did. It's just frankly that industry doesn't have that kind of trajectory. Clearly, it's not, the biggest guys can't do it, so the smaller guys won't either. You don't own it all. It's not like you're an individual YouTuber making $1 million a year or $5 million a year like a lot of our peers did in the industry. So that wasn't on the table. We had the pressure of investors too saying, where's our return? And so all those elements, he just looked at me frankly and said, I think, Jacob, it's time for you to sell the company. And give yourself a timeline. Like, can you sell this thing in the next, I don't know, is it 6 months or 12 months? If you do, great. If you don't, fine. You shut it down and that's it. You move on. And I think there was like that moment of it. First of all, hearing that, I was like, oh my God, he's absolutely right. That's exactly what I needed to hear. I was so miserable. Just every day, just trying to think, what am I going to do? How's this thing going to work? How are we going to get it to where we wanted it to be? It's profitable, but it's not hugely profitable. So it's not like it's the kind of thing that I want to bank. It kind of like as an investor today, would you put your dollar on that chip? Like, would you bet on that horse? Again, right now where you are, all things being equal. And I was like, no, it wasn't it for me in my career. I was like, I put my time into it. I loved it. It's still doing great, but it wasn't like it was going to go from 0 to 60 again, or from 10 to 100 again. So him saying that to me was like, that's absolutely right. And where I stood in all that was, I'm ready to move on. Like this was the first job that I had that I would loved, where I could use every single skill that I had, from design to production, to technical skills, to creative, to filmmaking, audience development, partnerships. I got to do everything, fundraising, it was awesome. But I had done my time. I was ready to move on. So in my matrix of thinking through what I wanted, and I did use the Tony Robbins method here. It's called the RPM method. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. Did you ever use that?
I've what is it?
The rapid planning method?
Rapid planning. That's from, what's the program? Something Edge, Get the Edge. I've listened to all of his 80s and 90s audio on YouTube. Programs.
So, but I got the YouTube copy. But it was exactly what I needed to hear, but I needed to first start with painting that vision of that. What's that result that I want? And in the case of thinking that through is like, I really want a scenario where my investors make money. I want a scenario where our team gets to keep their jobs. I want a scenario where the brand and the channel continues. Like, we're not letting our audience down by shutting this whole thing down. And I want to be able to step away. That was another big piece for me, was like, I want to be able to leave. Because I don't want to be indebted. I don't want to spend another 5 years here. I want to be able to be free, take some time off, and think about what I want to do next. And
is a big financial windfall the unspoken fifth thing? Or you really were just like, if I can get investors' money and do well by the audience and get out, that's a win?
I think the windfall, look, it was a perk for sure. Like, if I could craft the deal and find a buyer who could make sure that I got money as well. That, because after years of deferring realistic salaries and not having, like, again, a lot of our peers making millions of dollars as YouTubers, it was like, that would be nice to make some money here.
I'm just curious where your mindset was at. Like, would you have sold for, you get 50 grand? Or was it like, no, when I say sell, I really mean I also get a big payday? It's
a good question. I think there was an element of, depending on what, so I think I went into a mindset of, I've decided that I want to sell. Mm-hmm. I've decided that this is what I want to do. Of course, I had to talk to Jared about this too. We walked through our scenarios and said, what are the scenarios here? Like, we sell, we don't sell. And we kind of mapped out like, where does this play out? And is it interesting to us or not? Like, is that, if we don't sell and we keep growing, are we going to be just the same forever? Like, it's going to be the same size for a long time. So we mapped that out and thought that stuff through. But in thinking that stuff through, I think we came to a place where it was important to sell. And in a way, it was important to sell and we would get the best options. I would enter into a mindset of, I'm going to go down a process. Like 50% of my time now is going to be spent on drumming up business. And we were big enough to get an investment banker, but no one was really interested. To be honest, every investment banker we talked to was like, not touching this industry, not touching the space. Like digital publishing, especially in 2018, was just it was a turd. No one wanted to touch it. So I basically learned how to become an investment banker and drummed up opportunities and prospects. Talked to every partner we'd ever talked to large media companies, and went in and just hit the pavement and did a roadshow for about 6 months, speaking to everybody we could, and understanding who was real, who was not, who was looking to buy, who had money, who didn't. And that was super interesting process, very exhausting, very, very, very stressful. But I went in with the exact thing that I talked about. Like, hey, I've been working on it for this long. We've got a really profitable, cool brand. I think in the right hands, this could be much, much more interesting than us just running it the way we have been. Our investors are ready for their return. Here's what we've got. Here are the assets. Here's the brand. Here's the channel. Here's the audience. And I think we were very lucky that those options that floated to the top all meant that everyone would be happy for the most part. There were a couple of partners who tried to lowball us and it wasn't great, but having a few partners who were saying, here's the price we're willing to pay. When you look at the waterfall of all of that, investors do well. They're willing to invest in our employees and keep them around. So
what you said, the right hands, this is one of the questions that I can't imagine righter hands for charisma on command than Ben and I, which is to say, the most valuable people to own this business are Ben and I. That's how this thing grows. There's no one else in the world that is going to come in and be like, hey, I'm Dave, and like Charlie stepped out for the next couple of years, but like,
you mean if your goal is to
maximize dollar value,
profit for the next 10 years.
Yes.
You struggle to imagine.
Even if they're a giant media company, because they're just going to lose the trust in the followers, which is really where the equity in our brand, and it sounds like you had some equity invested in the systems that is different. So
I don't want that
and
to
the
be
formats
true, by the way.
and
So
stuff.
if you think
and the formats, yes, and you had shows.
True, let us know. Because
so what were the right hands? What did they have when they're like, look, what I got plus what you got is worth more than just what you got?
Yeah, each partner was different. Like, I mean, a lot of So it depends on the brand. Like, I've got a great friend of mine who runs Donut Media. I don't know if you know Donut. They're a big car brand on YouTube and everywhere, podcasting, Facebook, etc. And Matt is brilliant. The brand that they've built is incredible. This is getting back to the question about like, if I put $1 on a horse, like, is this the right one? Well, with Wisecrack, like, we reached a lot of potential. We reached a lot of the philosophy lovers, a lot of the movie and film lovers, and we captured what we thought we could. But in the car culture world, like, they're on a tear. They continue to grow at ludicrous rates. They're selling so much merch. They've got a passionate fan base that is willing to pay money and loves cars, and it's passionate, and it's the right category. But they built it all as a brand. Like Wisecrack, it's a brand. There's Donut Media. There's a few hosts people love, but really it's a brand. And so that could be in anyone's hands. So if that's in the hands of Car and Driver magazine and they need a digital property, maybe that just the resources, the reach, the advertising relationships can be unbelievable for them. It can take them to a whole other level. For Wisecrack, it was a matter of like, we want to make sure that we're at least in like-minded hands, people who like pop culture, who understand YouTube and media. And so we whittled it down to probably 2 or 3 of the top options when we're looking to sell. We had some terms that we were very, very focused on in terms of how it would pan out, including me being able to leave and the difference of earnout versus being able to buy the assets or buying the property outright. And the partner that we landed on, so Omnia Media, was a gaming media brand. And our main partner there, Greg Campanis, I mean, Greg loves gaming, loves pop culture and media content, loves building and creating formats and brands. Like, at the end of the day, it was like a marriage. Like, he was a great partner. He was someone who just believed in the brand, knew what we could do, didn't want to change a thing either, which was like, hey, Jacob's going to take off. We'll try to keep him, but he's going to take off. But Jared, you can keep doing your thing. Alec, you can stick around. The team can stick around. Like, I don't want to mess with that formula at all. And for us, that was cool because that
he's
gave
just
us
like, I want to
everything.
do more. It sounds like he's like, I'm going to do what you guys are doing again and again for years to come, and just do it maybe bigger, maybe more of it.
Right.
Did they
like, we
demand
can get more
Jacob
audience.
stay?
We can take you to television. We've got a media TV production business. Blah blah blah. And so it was just like it allowed us to have the infrastructure and the team to be able to do a lot more than we could have done on our own. Because we could have to rebuild all that.
Did they demand that Jacob stay?
No, that was kind of part of my terms. Like when they said part of the
Jacob
deal.
or Alec?
Well, Jared, you mean?
Jared.
Jared.
Oh, sorry, Jared.
Sorry.
Yes.
Jared left much longer after you, right?
Yeah. So
I'm just curious if that was because of his choice or because of the buyer. I'm just curious what the behind the scenes was on that.
Yeah, no, sure. So like for me early on, I in the whole process, I said, look, I want to step away. So if it takes, if I can leave in a month or 2 years or whatever it takes, that's fine. But I ultimately want to take off. Jared actually did want to stay. He really did want to stick around, and Alec wanted to stick around, and our sales guy Alex at the time wanted to stick around. So everyone on the team wanted to stick around, and I think the three of them were contingencies on the deal. Like they said, we don't need, they're not indentured, like they're not going to have to stay forever, but we want to have at least employment contracts in place with them that are agreed to with terms. And so a lot of that was structured. I can't get into details because it is confidential, but it was structured basically in a way. Yeah, they wanted Jared to stick around because they wanted him to stick around, and he did want to stick around. But after a while, I think Jared was there for about a year and a half after the sale, and ultimately out of his own accord just said he wanted a break. He was just done with this. He had sort of said, like, look, I spent like 8 or 9 years of my life just pouring everything out of my brain here, and I'm done. Like, and it's also stressful. I need to refill my brain a bit.
That's how I feel. It's like I need to go live. I need to go struggle. I need to go have a problem, not know what to do, solve it, and then talk about it, as opposed to pull on the reservoir of problems that I've solved in the past. Yeah, that's a great point, because it is. I'm sure you're seeing this more and more. If you're not talking to a lot of YouTubers, maybe not, but a lot of YouTubers are going crazy. I mean, it's just so stressful. The burnout is insane. There's no stopping ever. It is very stressful. It's very, very difficult. And especially as a creator, I think it's one thing as the business people, because we're used to that sort of the marching of the process, but it's not personal. It's not like we're sucking out any more out of our personal brain, out of our like emotions in our brain and our content, our substance to be able to make stuff. Whereas on the creative side, that's how it works. Like, people make a TV show and they go on break for the next 9 months, or they make a movie and they take a break for next 5 years. Like, to create that constantly on this sort of timeline, YouTube is very brutal. It's very, very brutal. And I should say that Ben has never, ever pushed me. Like, not once. He stepped in to help, super helpful. There have been, and I think part of the reason that I feel like I can keep going is because I've been allowed breaks, vacations. You know what I mean? Like, hey, take a month and come back. Like, take as long as you want and come back when you want. And so I feel. How are you about doing that, though? Are you pretty good about being able to take the break, or are you kind of workaholic?
Gotten a lot better. The other thing is, I stepped in to make videos, so it's not like the sky was falling. Yeah. It's not like it was like, hey, Charlie, take as much time as you need. I'm a magnanimous guy, but also I'm going to let views and subscribers and revenue fall. And I'll just let you know once a month, hey, we're down 20%. We're down 30%. Now we're down 50%. Do you want to come back yet? Right. It wasn't like that. I just made videos so that we could like. And we've slowed our cadence. We're, 3 a month or 2 a month as opposed to 4 a month, which is, to me, fine. No, for sure. But it was you making, only you making the videos for a long period of time. And then I came in for a handful of months and you did no videos. And then you came back and then did all the videos, and now we alternate in a way where it's like, hey, just do 1 or 2. Whoever's fresh will take this month. One. Yeah, and so that's been how we've, I don't think prevented burnout, but prolonged the inevitable. It's coming. You know what I mean? No, that's great. Try to tag team. Pass the hot potato. I think maybe I never felt confident enough stepping in to make Wisecrack content. Yeah. It was too hard for me. It wasn't my thing. Like, I don't think it's content that I understood well enough to make on my own. I mean, I was the CEO. I could run a lot of the processes and I could get the right team in place. And Alec was a huge help there, but it wasn't the kind of thing where I felt comfortable enough for me to step in. Like, we did get, Jared did go on vacation and I had to really push. I mean, I think for years I had to
like legitimately convince him or sometimes force him to take vacation to prevent what I could foresee would become burnout. But I never felt confident enough to really step in and make videos myself. So that was
how did you guys find Alec? Because Alec now makes all your videos, right?
On a Reddit, we found him on a Reddit AMA. He asked us questions on an AMA on Reddit for our 8-Bit Philosophy show. He was a huge philosophy nerd. He ran a philosophy website and just, asked us like, hey, if you ever need help, please, or maybe how do you find your writers or something like that, some kind of question like that. And he said, we're always looking for talent. Feel free to email us here. And he emailed us afterward. He became our social media manager or sort of social media consultant for a while, doing some of our Facebook posting. And then little by little, like we let him in, we let him write some scripts with Jared. I think he wrote his first script and it was like, Jared and him were on the phone every day, all day, like on Zooms all day long, all the time. I mean, they were just lock in step. So in some ways it was like they really formed a partnership where Alec could take over very easily.
So he didn't come in writing Jared level scripts. It sounds like he came in, started working on stuff.
So really? I actually heard differently, and I'm curious if this is correct. He had his own website, right? He was writing. He was doing this.
He was always writing. Yeah, he was always writing, but he wasn't writing scripts. He was writing websites. Like he was writing philosophy articles. And he's a writer. He's a brilliant writer. Yeah. But I think our first project was we gave him. He had to write a script for 8-Bit Philosophy. And I think he worked with our philosophy scholar. So the way we worked is that every show had a set of academics that we'd work with, like PhDs or scholars within philosophy or literature or history. And then they would get paired up with a filmmaker or a comedy writer to create our script that then we would go produce. And so I can't remember if Alec worked with our scholar, Mia, or if he did it on his own, but he wrote in the voice of that 8-Bit Philosophy show, which is a British narrator and very tight. It's like 2 to 3 minutes long. But he did great. And then eventually he started to write in the voice of Jared and now in the voice of Michael Burns. We have a host named Dr. Burns, who's now our new host. But anyway, he totally picked it up and got it. He was a writer who he already had the skill set, but then he had to learn how to write for video. And he's a pro.
For people listening, one of the things that I see, and I'm curious if this matches your experience, is that some of the better people that have done really well and surprised us, I think of our video editor, we're like doing it before and we're like, can I help? As opposed to what I get a lot of, and I think is very good intention, but ultimately unhelpful and doesn't work, is I'll come in, I'll sweep floors, I'll do anything, please just train me and I'd love to be a writer. So that is in stark contrast to our video editor who's like, hey, I edit videos for fun. I edited yours for fun. What do you think of my edits? And I was like, he's been our editor for 5 years.
I'm already a better editor than you are because you were doing your own editing.
Just have your equivalent of Alec's website, which it might not be getting a ton of traffic. Like, where are you doing your art? Even if it doesn't have a huge audience right now, where are you honing your craft that I can go and see? And also that you're actually honing the craft. So when I bring you in, you're not just stage one.
Yeah. Hi, I'm eager to learn.
It's a great point. Because so we were recruiting all the time, or at least we're open to getting great talent all the time. And that stuff, you're right. Like if someone would said, I'm fresh out of school, I have no experience, but I'm happy to do anything. Mm-hmm. It was just a matter. It wasn't that it wasn't malicious. We just didn't know what to do with that. Like it was just we're so busy that I think you rush to put someone in a box to think, okay, they're an editor. Great. I need editing help now. Great. Yep. As an example, I after I left Wisecrack, I'm looking to move to the UK. I want to move back to London. I want to live out there again. And I started interviewing with companies just to get practice. I started interviewing with Salesforce.com and Zenefits and I don't know, all these different brands. And as I'm talking to these people, I'm like, they're looking at my resume and they're like, so you're a CEO? What do you, how can you do here? And I'm like, so they had no idea what to do with me is my point. So similarly, like if you don't have if you don't say you have an expertise or a skill set, it's hard. So as a writer, Alec was great to say, oh, he's a writer.
Interesting.
I have so one of the threads that I've heard you talk about is kind of the corrupting influence of business and necessity to earn in artistic endeavor. And I'm curious now how you're thinking about that going forward. You've got some nest egg. What do you think about that? I see that in my own life, and I try very hard to make clear what my actual need is. Like if the business shrinks, that's not a bad thing. Like here's my need, here's what my employees need. It is lower than the business. And even if it goes down, that doesn't mean I need to compromise on the enjoyment of the artistic endeavor and creation. And I just did a dud video on Cobra Kai, but fuck it, I enjoyed watching Cobra Kai. You know, like, and that's not a fail.
Well,
That's not a
just
fail.
to be clear, I think that's great. And I actually think that's better than no video. You know what I mean? Like the audience that does like us enough to watch anything got a great video. So I consider Cobra Kai a win.
Me too. And so that's one of the, I guess what I'm saying is that
told you that yet, I guess so.
I considered it a win. 10 of 10. You know how YouTube has those? This is a solid 10 of 10 of our last video.
Worst video, but we tried to do react videos just because we were playing around with format. You know, I'm sure you guys did a lot. And I never really was hyped when we did that. I was like, I hope people like this. I don't know that it's that helpful. And this did worse than all the recent react videos, but I'm much happier to publish it. You know what I mean? Because
it feels authentic to you guys.
And the process that went into it, I was like, I think it's good. So I'm curious how you think of that, because I'm sure that you guys, I don't know if it was the Avengers video, but you're like, look, this one has the topic and the title and the content. I was a tag along. It was just so I could put this thumbnail, this title up at the time of the Avengers release or whatever. So how are you thinking about business and art and what you want to do next? How has your thinking changed, evolved? What's up next?
I did a lot of thinking. So in the moment, like I think one thing that was hard at Wisecrack was once we were in the motion of it and in the emotion of it, it was just hard to kind of make those kinds of calls to say, hey, this is okay. This is an okay thing for us to do, and this is not. Like, it's nice that you guys have the reflection to be able to say, that was a great video. I don't care if it didn't do well. And sometimes we'd have to go into certain projects. We definitely did a pilot season every year or so. We'd do like we'd go create 5 or 6 new shows. We'd tell the audience, these are going to be pilots. You're going to see new shit. Don't freak out. Try to support them if you can, so the algorithm doesn't freak out. But we knew going into that, we are here. This is our chance and our time to be really creative and expressive and see what happens and see what comes out of that. And if the views are bad, fine, we're okay with that. But we could do that when it was contained in that way. It was harder to do that when it was like a day-to-day video, when we just had a really fresh idea and we didn't know how to execute it relative to the requests and the requirements of having advertisers. The way that we did end up landing on this is what we called candy versus vegetables. And this came out of us being an educational channel.
Sure.
So we said there's going to be some content we make that's going to be just candy. It's going to help us grow. It's going to help us get the audience and the views that we need. It's going to help the algorithm think that we're a good channel. And then there's going to be vegetables. It's like when we want to cover like Eyes Wide Shut and we want to cover like this really esoteric, Korean cinema that no one's going to know about, but we really are interested in. Sure. That's our vegetables. And so the ratio we landed on was 75% candy and 25% vegetables. It would not be a very healtty diet.
It's a very balanced diet.
I did not recommend a very balanced diet of just candy.
You could reverse it. You could say that the 75% is your vegetables. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to eat them, but they're good for the business. Yeah. And then the 25% of Eyes Wide Shut, that's your candy. Now all of a sudden it's a healthy diet.
That's a good point. Very good
Food
point.
pyramid.
Eh? You were audience centric, but
look at you, Mr. Marketer.
More me centric. There you go. Yeah, exactly. I'm the spin master.
So, but going forward, is that I imagine that you don't want that diet anymore. That you don't want to have to do things for money, especially with a bit of a nest egg from the sale. So like, what are you looking at? Are you gonna, you mentioned that you're into Buddhism. Are you gonna go off and meditate? Like what's up next?
Yeah, I've been practicing for 6 or 7 years now. So the Buddhism side is that's a whole other very, very cool and very rewarding practice. I love it. And interesting ethics. And it's really fascinating. I spent the last year consulting for money, but trying to figure out where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. I read a book called Designing Your Life. It's a bit cheesy book, but it did a very interesting job of understanding where my energy gets drawn, like where my energy is drawn from and where I get energy and where I'm in moments of flow and not. That was an interesting exercise, but it also helps you map out versions of your life. I think like Buddhism, you want to be able to sit comfortably with the totality of what's going on. And that can mean when things don't really go your way or they do. And in this life planning exercise from that book, it was similar in that it was like, you're going to come up with 5 different versions of what your life can become over the next 5 years. And none of them is right or wrong or better or not. They're just truly paths that can happen. And you get comfortable with that, not thinking like, I have to pick the one version that's going to make my life happen or not happen. So in that exercise, I started to brainstorm and think through these different pieces. A lot of it, to be honest, in that reflection, I didn't feel like ethically I had compromised myself much. Like to be honest, like advertising supports media. is sort of a given. Like I don't look at that with dread and anger. It's just how it goes. I mean, we used to watch TV, we used to watch whatever, Nickelodeon or MTV, and ads would play, and that's just how it goes. I'm not upset by that.
So hard for Jared, but not hard for you.
Yeah, I think it's harder for Jared because I think it's upsetting. You know, I think a creator, I think for Jared, he'd much rather create a really cool show, like create South Park and put it on a network and let the network deal with the advertising. Yep. But like at the end of the day, the product is not compromised.
Totally.
And I totally get that. And I'd rather make non-compromised products. It's not to say that I don't want to, but it didn't come up a lot when I was thinking through my life. I look at it a lot as like I have skills that I want to either develop or use and practice. So for me, it is a lot of the creative skills, but I'm just not. I don't think I'm as sort of triggered by the reality of some of the business side of things. It doesn't really bother me as much. But I really wanted to work on something that was just gonna excite me. I wanted to learn a lot. Like in this next chapter of my career, I'm 34. I have maybe 2 or 3 swings left in my career. I want to learn as much as I can. I want to work with really cool, interesting, open-minded, kind, respectful people. So those were the kinds of things that were going through my mind more so than how will I not compromise my art? Like I guess maybe one way of thinking about it for me was art was going to be in some ways compartmentalized. It was going to be, there's me playing on my guitar, writing songs, listening to music, writing short stories, like that stuff. I don't want to monetize that. I don't want that to become my income, or if it does, I don't know. I'd like to do that at a time maybe where I don't need the money as much.
That's exactly how I feel about this podcast. I want it to support Justin. I want it to support itself. As soon as I take money from it, it's going to become less fun. Right. So let me put that off. Even if it does well, I'll just put it in an escrow. And if there's down months,
let's just put all the excess profit into Bitcoin. And then in 10 years, we'll just split it 3 ways.
Just not look at
Justin
it.
Justin can retire a millionaire, or it's all gone.
It's all gone. Whoops. But I also, I love playing guitar. I'm not particularly good at it, but I can't imagine if you took that from me and had that corrupting influence of needing to earn or needing to produce. It's so nice to have that separate. So I do understand why you would want to just be, nope, my art is here, my income is here, and never the twain shall meet.
It's just hard, but I think like maybe the 3 of us we're lucky in a way. Like for some of my friends who are true artists, and I'd put Jared in that camp. It's just like, it's not like there's no other option. Like being an artist and being creative and making great art, that is just how it's going to go down. Like that's what my life is. That's what it's going to be. And so separating and compartmentalizing that work from making a living is harder, because it's like, that is my skill and that's what I want to do. And that's who I am. And that's it. And so LA is a cool place for that. It's a whole town where everyone's making money creating. And that's awesome. That's so cool. But it's rare. But I did paint in that exercise of that book. I painted visions and versions of my life that were me as an artist, making money from that. And, it could be writing short stories or doing podcasts that are narrative and telling stories that way, or music. And they're very cool. I like them all, but something about them just didn't rub me the right way. It just didn't feel like the path I wanted to take.
Got it.
So are you open at this point to being the founder of a new startup, the first hire of a startup that's not yours, where you get some equity, or an employee on a salary? Are those all things you're considering?
Yeah. Well, I just took a full-time job. So I just joined a company full-time. So I joined HiHo, the brand that I was telling you about. I joined them full-time. I was thinking, I think like that was maybe took some, maybe that took some realization of like, would I be okay not being the CEO and not being the founder of something new?
They're a pre-revenue startup though, right? So I assume you're getting some ownership even as an employee?
Yep. Okay. This was an interesting exercise. That was a friend of mine, Lindsay, who works at Universal Music. We were having lunch and I was telling her, I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I'm going to consult and figure it out. And she said, if you are open to working for somebody, and I said, I definitely am. I'm like, to me, the idea of not being the CEO is like, yes, sign me up, sign me up. Maybe I think I will start another company eventually, but in terms of running the whole thing, I'm excited not to be doing that right now.
Yeah.
I'm not in the headspace to do it, but she said, think about like, who are the 3 or 4 people that you would love to work for, like dream people. And I came up with that list, and one of them was the CEO that I'm now working for. So Greg Spiridelis, he created Jib Jab back in '99. If you remember, Jib Jab was like the political cartoons, and then starring you, having your head on different cartoons
your
for
little
greeting
Christmas
cards.
elf card where you're dancing around.
Oh, yeah,
you know Jib Jab.
yeah,
You've got
yeah.
Jib Jab.
Yeah. He created Elf Yourself, which was with Office Max. So they created that for Office Max for like, you can become an elf. Then he created a show called Storybots with his brother, which is on Netflix, which is like it's like a Sesame Street for kids. It's like Sesame Street for the new generation. And Netflix just acquired and bought that, including all the properties and the characters. So Greg is like, he was an advisor to Wisecrack. He's someone I've admired forever. I mean, he was an advisor to Bizarre Voice, the company before. A kind, amazing, creative soul. And so like when he told me what he was building, it just all clicked. Like looking back at that book that I had worked through, that Designing Your Life book, it was like, I want to learn a ton, and I do want to get back into app development. I want to get into more consumer technology. I want to learn tech. I want to be connecting with tons of creators and interesting people. I want to work with a great team. Like it checked every single box, and hopefully this job will also take me back to London. The idea being that I help expand the product into the UK and into Europe and Asia. So it just like it checked every box that I wanted. So I'm thrilled, but it took like a year of reflecting on like just like a post-mortem of all that, you know, that those 8 or 9 years of Wisecrack and that whole journey to get there.
Were the so you had some yes checks, like I want this. What were the mistakes? You did your postmortem. You're coming through the other side.
Yeah.
People watching now, I imagine, have not entered and exited. Any like words of wisdom, even Ben and I, who haven't
things
exited.
you wish you'd done differently, or advice for people who are becoming entrepreneurs or who are early stage entrepreneurs?
Man, that is a hard question.
I know it's a broad one.
It's big.
I hear one that I don't, and I guess we mentioned it, but and again, tell me if you don't agree. But it sounds like you because you didn't have like this clear vision, and Ben asked earlier, like, what did you want from it? It became about survival on sometimes a day-to-day basis, and sometimes you made decisions that signed you up for long-term consequences that you didn't want. Like I have this, you know, these investors that they're great, but like they're my boss now, and you know, and so perhaps. I'm just suggesting without that clarity of like, what is this business for beyond putting food on my table day to day? It's just easy to get sucked into what keeps me alive today. And I don't know if that resonates.
No, that's exactly right. As I was thinking about this conversation today, I think I was trying to think through what would be the words of wisdom. And I think so much of what happened once we're on a roll, like once we've raised money, or once we even have traction, once we decide that we're going to do this thing, so much at that point just becomes about momentum and gravity doing its work, right? Yeah. Like it's at that point you become, at least maybe because of my lack of experience, I became a slave to the sort of the momentum and the pressure and the decisions that we made determined the outcome and determined our course for a long time. And so of course we were adjusting along the way, but so much of it was based on what we had to do. And I do wish that Jared and I had spent more time maybe thinking through these things philosophically and making those hard calls early on about what we wanted it to become, where we wanted to grow. You know, if things forced us to go down a path of having to make compromises or having to do advertising, like how would we react? It would be really cool to kind of preempt a lot of that. But we both of us would have felt ridiculous planning for stuff like that when Jared had $500 left in the bank. Like it would have been ridiculous. Like it was. So it's hard to say. And I started Wisecrack, I think when I was 26 or something when I moved over here. So it's just a different time. We were younger. Jared was even younger than that, I think 24 or something. So we were young, and I'm so happy we did it. Because had we thought too much about it, the caveat on that, the other side of that is you have inaction, you know, so there's inertia and you just don't do anything. Totally. And so I think the mantra for Jared and I was just make stuff, just make shit, and you'll figure out the rest. And we did that. So it's hard to say, right? Like looking back, it's always like pros and cons. I would say, I think the question that Ben had asked me beforehand is like, what type of person should go make a YouTube channel, and what kind of personality does it take? And I think going in with open eyes about what that really requires is important. Was it cool for sponsors to send us free stuff? As an example, my mother's loves watching like makeup YouTube, and she's like, God, these people get all this free crap. That's so cool. I'm like, okay, yes, it is cool to get whatever free headphones and free whatever gifts or whatever sponsor stuff. That is one tiny portion of the responsibility that comes with it. Once you launch the YouTube channel, once you're on a roll, the truth is that you have to upload pretty much 1 to 3 times per week, at least every week for the rest of your life, for the rest of the life of the channel, if you want it to be successful. And that is, that's a big burden, and that's, there are no weeks off. There are no vacations. And so you have to be kind of going in with open eyes, knowing that's going to be the requirement. So,
I
don't know.
I try to be the outlier there, and we still have done one a week. But I looked at people like CGP Grey and to people. So I totally agree with you.
There's a few.
If you look at the line of success, you're right. Like the average is exactly what you described. Like all the big guys, they have to upload daily, and they're on a grind, and burnout is 99%. But I've always been interested in the one guy who breaks the rule, and I think that there is potential for that out there. The CGP Greys, not that we're totally that, but we've taken time off.
How did CGP get his audience? Because I think for us, we grew making videos once a week, and then altered that once we had an audience and momentum.
Nerd City, I mean, these people, what they do is, and I'm not recommending it to everyone, but what you're saying is like, look, if you want to be successful on YouTube, the playbook is what you're saying. Crank videos out that are popular at least 1 a week and probably 2 or 3 times a week. No denying that.
It depends on how many mouths there are to feed too, right? Like when we look at Vsauce, they are more of a company, and they've also launched a product. They've launched a box service, right? It's like a monthly box, like a Loot Crate type thing, and that helps support them. CGP Grey is just one guy in London, and he's. But I don't know. Yeah, his audience is incredibly fanatical and incredibly loyal, and there are some exceptions like that.
He makes great stuff.
No, sorry. I'm just saying, how did he get the first 10,000 people to see it?
We have to have him on the podcast.
I don't know. Yeah.
Do you know the answer to that question?
Because that's the hard part. Like once you have an audience, Logan Paul can literally take 8 months off to train for a fight, come back and get more views on his video than any video we do. But post it every single day for an extended period of time to build the audience. Sure. So I'm just curious, how do these people who only post once a month get started?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm not sure.
After your first 1 million subscribers, I think
it's different.
Makes sense.
And I'm close with, not close, but I know Derek from Veritasium, for example. He's got like 68 million views, 65 million views on his those balls on the lake video. Yeah. And
that one was everywhere for a week or so.
And he came back with a vengeance. He took some time off, and his videos, again, they're much more in depth. It takes a long time to kind of create them. That happens occasionally. Mark Rober. I feel like it really, if it's something that's a big spectacle, some channels do really well. But again, let's just say Mark Rober's not uploading every day. That guy has no time. Like
he's so
amazingly busy because each video is incredible, and he's developed a course, and he's doing Facebook programming, and he's down to maybe his last 15 minutes a week. That's free. So the point is, just like when you go in, you're kind of all in. It's hard to make it kind of just a fun hobby. Like YouTube is a lot. If you're going to make it your career, it's tough.
Cool. Any
I have another question. So Buddhism, tell me about that. I'm very interested conceptually, but I have no practices, and I'm curious as someone who's self-professed Buddhist. Does that mean that you go to a Buddhist religious center? Does it mean you have a practice at home that's sacred to you that you do for an hour every day and nothing comes before it? Does it mean that you're like me, you've read books and find it interesting and agree with it, but it's not necessarily a huge part of your day-to-day? What does it mean to you, and what are your practices?
Thanks. I don't know if I consider myself a Buddhist. I don't know. I mean, I'm studying and practicing Buddhism, but I don't know. I don't know what it takes to kind of cross the chasm there. But
me neither.
I don't know.
That's why I'm asking you.
But I started. So right now my practice is I meditate every day, 30 minutes a day. I'm now training with a Zen teacher, a senior Zen Dharma teacher from the Dharma Zen Center here in LA. Tim Callahan, who's great and has been practicing for 35 years.
What does that training look like? Do you guys sit and meditate together, or he?
Yeah, at this point it's one-on-one Zooms. So this is new for me. It's fairly new, but we meet once a week. We sit together, so we meditate and practice together. And then it's koan training. So Zen is what's called kungan or koan training, which is a lot of the training is done through questioning, through very interesting questions, sort of a dialogue that happens where the student or the pupil is asked a question and prompted a question, and it retrains the way that you answer questions. That's sort of foundational and built off of a lot of the practices and the wisdom of the training, the wisdom of the teachings.
Could you give an example of a koan for us?
Yeah. So an example of a koan is, what was your face before your mother was born?
Yeah.
And learning how to answer that and how to hold a question like that where there is no duality, where there is no real solid answer. Or where were you before your mother was born? These are questions that are bigger. They're impossible to answer, yet you have to hold them again with that totality. And
what was your face before your mother was born?
Or do you have? I
won't share them only because it kind of breaks the whole training. But in a sense,
do you respond
I don't
in language?
know. That's the end. I don't know.
Do you respond with language, or is the point to have that epiphany moment where you become the witness, realize that you are like what? Is it possible that the right answer to a koan is words, or is that just exclude you from ever getting the koan, quote unquote?
No,
right?
there are some koans, I think. So I'm still fairly new at this, right? So I've been practicing kind of Vipassana training and a very different form of Buddhism before. But yes, some koans can and should be answered with words. Some are not answered with words.
Interesting.
So good question. Like I'm learning all this. To me, I entered Buddhism, or entered meditation through just sort of sitting. Insight LA is a group here in LA that just does mindfulness-based stress reduction. So it's more just mindfulness, and things like the apps like Calm and Headspace, they're sort of decoupled from the religion. So if you think of like a stool, meditation is one leg along with the wisdom and the ethics, but it's just separated, it's decoupled. And so you just focus on meditation. So I did that for many years. And read a few books here and there, like Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind was a really cool introductory book. I read a lot of Jack Kornfield books about meditation and Buddhism. And then eventually got more and more interested in what else is there. And I'm part of a group called Silver Lake Meditation here in LA, which is also a Zoom group. And Tim was an occasional guest teacher. Tim was my Zen teacher. And I just asked him, would he mind doing one-on-one training? That sort of seems to be the sort of the pattern anyone takes, is to move and graduate toward one-on-one training with a teacher.
And
it's been very interesting.
Is it fair to say you're adding the other two legs now? So you got the meditation leg. Sounds like pretty comfortably relative to the general population. Sure. So now you're adding the other legs to make it more of a Buddhist practice instead of just a mindfulness practice? Yeah,
I think that's right. Like wisdom, the wisdom trainings and the wisdom talks, you can find so many of those on Insight Timer, on YouTube, on kind of anywhere. So you find a teacher you love, like Pema Chodron is someone that I love, Jack Kornfield. You can listen to their talks. You can read, Chogyam Trungpa. You can read these books about wisdom. And then the ethics are also always introduced. Like as you learn about Buddhism, you're just introduced to some of the basic ethics of the religion. Or if you even call it religion, it's like a philosophy in a sense. But you start to connect them all, and they all start to come together where all of a sudden they're integrated in a way that I find much more fulfilling. I mean, the practice of sitting and sitting mindfully and seeing and observing and understanding your thoughts, when they're combined with the work that you've put into, you understand the wisdom of the religion or the wisdom of the teachings, and you now have this ethical framework, then it becomes this really interesting combination and synergy of, you learn how to sit, you learn how to practice with your thoughts, but then all of a sudden in life, moment by moment, as things come up, and you feel confident in how you behave. And there's a interesting, I think they're called the primaries, which are the 5 things that you sort of chant to yourself or say to yourself every morning. I'm of the nature to grow old. I'm of the nature to grow sick. I'm of the nature to die. Everything that I love will change or go away. My only true possessions are my actions. And so you learn to sort of sit with this idea that every moment by moment, you're sort of, you understand your function and you act.
Can you tell me more about those ethics? So it sounds like that's a release of material possession and increased attention towards action. What are there some shoulds of Zen Buddhism? Because when I think of ethics, I think of what you should do, and perhaps that's a very Western view of what ethics have come to mean. But they're prescriptions for good behavior and restrictions from bad behavior. Is that how ethics work within Buddhism? That there are things you should be doing or ways you should be doing things?
Yeah. It's painted quite simply. It's things like right mind. So like being of the right mind and being in a place where you can be clear-headed, you can think straight, you have equanimity. You're able to, be disinterested in a positive way. Not killing is very simple. I mean, it's very into most Buddhists are vegetarian, at least. I'm not. I used to be, but I'm not now. So as an example, that's one that I'm not fully prescribed to. But not that I'm opposed to it, just not something that I've crossed. Right speech, so speaking, and that all, they're not very clear. I mean, in a sense, they're intentionally vague. It's like, and there's ideas that all of these things should just not be done with heedlessness. So you might take a precept of saying, I'm no longer going to intoxicate myself, but only to heedlessness. Like if the intoxicant, if you're taking a psychedelic and that's going to help you catalyze some of your insight or your enlightenment, that's fine. Or if you want to drink and you have a drink and it's not heedless, it's not going to get you out of control, that's fine. And if you've got if there's a hornet coming to kill you and you got to kill the hornet, I think that's fine. So I think a lot of it, so much of the teaching is the middle way. Is just, you aspire for something, you aspire to do these things, you aspire to kind of live a certain way, and every day you just try, and that's it. That's the effort. You don't beat yourself up about it. And I kind of like that about it's been it just sounds very true. Like every time, the more and more I read and study and practice, I'm like, this just feels right. This feels like something I've known all along, but I've not been paying attention to.
Is there, what you just mentioned kind of made me think, is there Buddhist punishment? Like in Christianity, there's hell, right? You don't do bad because we are going to give it to you in the afterlife.
If you screw it up, you're just going to regret it forever as you get tortured by the devil. And
what's interesting about Buddhism, and correct me if I'm wrong, is my impression is like the only hell there is the it's the doing of the wrong thing. It's like you just suffer in the attachment to the material good. There's no further punishment in the afterlife or anywhere else.
There's no afterlife. There is this is stuff suffering. That I'm not quite prescribed to, and I don't know enough about. So I'm quite ignorant. But there are elements of karma at play with certain sects of Buddhism, where karma comes into play in the sense of there's things like reincarnation, who you come back as, your karmic seeds sort of following you. I really don't know anything about this. I'm purely ignorant. I'm just sort of, from what I gather, there's that whole element there. And there's also a mystical sort of element as well that's also quite divided and different. And just like any religion, like Buddhists also fight about what's right and what's wrong and who's true and all that good jazz. So but
it's a very peaceful fight.
Not always. There are some
Buddhist wars out there.
There have been Buddhist wars for sure.
So are you also interested? We've talked in the podcast. Are you interested in breathwork, psychedelics, altered states, or how does that connect at all?
No. Psychedelics are awesome. I have a lot more experience with mushrooms. So like psilocybin has been, I'd say I'd put it. I read the Michael Pollan book, right? How to Change Your Mind, and I'd say, just like a lot of people in that book, like I'd put mushrooms probably in some of the top 5 experiences of my life. Profound. Enduring, like I feel like they stick with me, and there have been a lot of talks around how they can serve as a catalyst to awakening. And so for someone who's in the right state of mind, or in the right has enough stability, mental stability, to do it well, or to do it without risk, I'd say it's great. And I found it to be just profoundly interesting. I don't know, how about you guys? Are you guys partakers?
Oh yeah, did we
not talk about it too much
when we talked the first time?
I think we might have. I don't remember. I don't know.
We're deep in it. Not as deep as like 10-year shamans, but
not a shaman.
big supporters. At least quarterly practicers,
and the future of Charisma on Command, or the entity that was Charisma on Command, I think is a psychedelic retreat center that I am very involved in. I don't know that I'll be the shaman, but I think that experiencing the transformative thing is amazing, and watching people experience psychedelic transformations it's just that watershed moment of like, oh my God, all the shit I was worried about it just pales in comparison to watching this person break through or even experience difficulty. It's just it feels so much more real. Which is what's strange, because I called them.
No, that's great.
I mean, everybody, myself included, calls them hallucinogens. And what's funny is it's the realest thing or some of the realest things that I've experienced are in and around those experiences. So that's very much.
I feel like the feelings are very real. The visuals. There was what's her name? She was on the Tim Ferriss podcast. Is it Elizabeth? Can't remember her last name. Eat, Pray, Love writer.
Gilbert.
Elizabeth Gilbert. So she spoke about psychedelics and mentioned that, she really for a long time felt that they were truth. Like she had found capital T truth in them. And then when sober, sort of reevaluated what she had seen and experienced and realized they were just that. They were visions. They were for her at least, they were just temporary trances. They weren't real. And so her having to separate those two pieces. And so I kind of land in the middle. I think maybe between the two of you guys, where I'd say you really experienced capital T truth potentially, or have seen things. And she says that's all baloney. It wasn't real.
I think Ben thinks that, right?
Well, no, I mean, here's my thing. It's like, is there a chance that these plants somehow mystically disconnect you from your body in a way that you experience truth with the capital T, such that when you think you are the universe, you're actually experiencing what your existence will be post-death? No ego, you are part of the universe, universal energy. Or the same way that you drink alcohol and it does something in your brain that makes you feel a certain way, and if you drink enough you'll get double vision or whatever. Do you take these and then they release chemicals in your brain, and then you see things that are being caused by your own brain and have nothing to do with anything except for your own brain? And what I've come to is no one can convince me of either with 100% certainty.
Sure.
And it doesn't really matter to me which one it is.
Yeah.
So that's where I land.
It's like, great.
This is still, if it's only in my own brain, I'm seeing my blind spots, moving past my trauma, creating neural synapses and connections that would not be possible without psychedelics, and then moving forward with a brain that is improved for empathy and removed from or released from the anxiety and trauma. It's like, great. Or is it the fact that I kissed divinity that makes it so that I go forward with more empathy and remove my trauma? Who cares? Like, why? I'm not going to stress. I'm not going to die on this hill. I'm not going to, and I don't feel a need to believe it's capital T truth, nor do my ego doesn't demand that I reject that there's some percentage chance that I'm kissing divinity. I just don't care personally. The experience is what it is, and it's good for me in the ways that I enjoy, which is the increased empathy. I think that concept of kissing
divinity, I think that's a lot of what my Zen practice has become. In the Zen meditation practice, you enter into a state which is a state where there is no sort of time or space, cause or effect, name or form. It's just sort of free floating ether or substance, right? That we're all part of. And you connect with that within a meditation, you connect with that. The idea is to return to like what's really here. And you're experiencing the interpenetration of those two things, of like that experience of this whole substance and divinity, or whatever we call this, this material, and what's really here in front of us, where there is cause and effect, and there is substance and form, and there is, cause and effect. It's things that are you're here in the world. And it's like the reintegration of those two pieces. But like that touching of divinity, I think that's the piece that has taken me 6, 7, 8 years of meditation practice to experience. But that happened in one night the first time I took mushrooms. That same exact feeling, that sensation of touching it. And there's a metaphor that's used by Thich Nhat Hanh. He's a Vietnamese thinker. He talks about the water and waves as this example, that we all are waves. So think of us in the ocean, we're waves. And we become sad that we're cresting and growing, but we all know that we're going to die. We're going to hit the shore and we're going to end, and our life as a wave will be over. And that some waves are bigger than us, and we feel like we're the small wave, and there's big waves and small waves, and there's waves that never get noticed, and there's waves that get surfed. But when we think about it all, the substance is that we're all just water. And so it doesn't matter, like the time span of life and death of a wave, of being big or small, it does not matter. It's perfect in the way that it is, and it's just water. And I think of like psychedelics and the practice as a wave touching the idea that we are just water. And so you get that occasional touch and glimpse of it. And knowing that we're water, then all of a sudden it's like you mentioned, Charlie, like everything else just sort of falls apart, like it falls away. The pressures don't seem as real or as big because you realize that we're all connected. It's all the same.
Yeah. No, and I don't know how you guys feel about this, but besides capital T, truth with a capital T, there's reality with a capital R, and you had mentioned you go into this experience and then you come back to reality. And maybe Charlie says, none of this is what you consider reality. Reality is only when you're up with no ego and there is no Charlie Hooper. And then there's other people who say, this is a simulation. So actually what you experience on psychedelics, that's not reality with a capital R. What you experience off of it, that's not reality with a capital R. You have no functional memory of ever having reality with a capital R. And I come back to the same thing with, is it divinity or is it purely existing in my neurons, which is fine. Okay, maybe I don't know which one's reality with a capital R. Maybe I'm like some sort
You're
of
a Zen Buddhist.
alien goat creature
hooked
up
up
to a thing. But
the totality of it, it's all real.
Sure.
It's all reality.
And I guess to me, if it's a simulation or this is reality with a capital R or this is some hallucination of universal consciousness, and I'm still going to live the same way, which is I'm going to try to have empathy, release my anxieties, contribute to the world. So I come back to the same thing with that one, which is I don't want to bicker about when you say, is this, and then you come back to reality. No, this isn't. It's like, I don't care. Because you can experience the kissing divine, you can experience the living in the 3D world. If this is a simulation, at some point you'll come out of it. So I don't feel like there's an advantage to that fight that I see some people get really fired up about. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
What the hell do we know? Yeah.
I share your I don't know. I share your not wanting to bicker. Where we might differ is that I think you said I don't care, and I care a lot. So like it's not something that if other people agree, or like I am at the same place of who fucking knows, but I'm supremely interested.
Yeah.
To me, it seems like the most important
I think
direction I could move in is to try to understand.
I think whichever one is the capital R, you'll inevitably find and can't speed your way to. I actually think no amount of ayahuasca ceremonies gets you there faster. You'll just get there when you die. I guess you could, if you jump in front of a bus, you'll get there faster.
And even that's faster as we call it 3D world time, which is
no. But so in terms of who cares, and you're saying it's very important to me. And again, maybe it's because I have a framework of, is this actionable? I guess that underpins a lot.
Exactly.
Of my
your axiom is, how does it? You've kind of presumed that this world is the most important plane of existence, and what will I do about it?
Let's say that I'm the water. I said that I'm a wave. The wave is unimportant, but I'm not going to crash any faster, even if I acknowledge that I'm not the wave and I'm the ocean. I'm not going to speed up my trajectory to shore. So
I think that's a great way of thinking about it.
It's not something I pursue, I guess. I don't pursue that.
But there's no duality. Like we clearly all care about it, like in the sense that we care because we're interested. We care that it helps open our awakening. We care that it feels like it's helping us see with a better perspective. But what the answer actually is, I don't think, to me, is as important. We can sit with the unknown, and that's comfortable and that's cool. But yeah, psychedelics have been. No, I think they're very, very interesting. But I've also heard the warning. I've seen friends and know of people who have family members who have experienced, bad experiences where they weren't ready and they've entered into states of deep depression or schizophrenia as a result of whatever, I think psychedelic treatment or practice, whatever you call it.
I do too, and I know that some people are pre-wired for a bad experience, but for the person I know that had a bad experience, I actually question if it was the setting and the shaman. I know someone that I think was actually on the road to getting something from their experience and literally got up and ran, just sprinted away, never really came back, and then blamed it for months of anxiety and bad mental health. And I question, his version would be that ayahuasca messed him up. And my version would be how he did ayahuasca messed him up. Because he didn't have
the support that he didn't have.
Yeah, because he didn't have a schizophrenic break. Like I know there's some people that if you just take a psychedelic, you'll have a schizophrenic break and you have to sense out. There's, different things that can maybe forewarn you if you're wired like that or not. But he didn't have that. What he had was afterwards a lot of anxiety and emotional unsteadiness. And so, he thinks he's one of these people that's wired for the danger. But I actually think if I had to place money on it, that it was the setting and shaman that led him to a bad experience. So I think it's
super
really, to his
important.
point about doing a center.
Your warning is well taken, though, because we often we can get up on our bully pulpit super excited about it while forgetting that we have a diverse audience of thousands of people. And
Yeah, it's not
within
right
that
for
are
everybody. I think that's. I really don't think so. There's Trudy Goodman runs Insight LA, and her brother. And so she actually ran an event on psychedelics and awakening. So she runs Insight LA. It's a very, very big meditation group, very important. And her brother had a very bad experience, and I think had psychotic episodes as a result, and never really fully recovered. This is now 20, 30, 40 years ago, but just for some people, it's not the right thing. I think it's responsible to kind of think that, or to say that, but if you do feel like you've got that foundation, you feel secure and safe, it can be fascinating. But yeah, set and setting is crucial. But I'm so curious to hear more about the center and things that you're thinking about. That's interesting,
dude.
It's a big responsibility.
We got to get you out there, man. We'll do it. So
where is this?
So I'll give you the brief synopsis of it. It's illegal right now, so we can't do it.
We did talk about this. That's right, Ben. I do remember this now.
So briefly, Oregon made psilocybin legal, but it's going to be 2 years till the licenses start, even then, you have to have been an Oregon resident. So I want to do it in the U.S. I don't want to upend my life in order to do it. And exactly. I think it's important that I am nearby and there and all of those sorts of things. So we're just very carefully waiting. We're building an audience. We're putting it out there that this is something we're interested in. I feel like I'm getting a ton from it. I'm so much a student. I'm actually going to be taking in June, I'm going to do my first facilitator training, which is to say that I will be in the room with a trained person and somebody else will be having their experience. And I will be the student driver, if you will. We both have steering wheels and mine is the primary one, but if I get in trouble, it's like, I'm taking over.
Yeah,
so
is the person doing it someone you know?
It will be someone that I meet and that we discuss.
So it's not your sister or your girlfriend?
No, it's going to be someone else going through the training. So it's kind of like haircutters cutting each other hair.
Okay,
so we're all going to get bad haircuts.
Got it.
It's what's going to happen
I got you.
at the end of this. But yeah, so I am looking forward to and nervous for that. That's going to be very interesting to be on the other side of that.
It's a big responsibility. Just
yes.
You know
and
that.
Again, I'm the student driver. I'm under no illusions that I'm the guy that's actually like I'm at the Fisher Price steering wheel, which is I'm driving daddy's car type thing. So in any event, man, this has been a fantastic conversation.
It's been so fun.
Oh, hold on, I got two more.
Oh, do it.
I got two more, and then I have two, but for off air because I know you're not going to want to talk about it. So this is one that Justin asked me to ask, our producer. So just because YouTube has changed so much and our audience, I think, is interested in that, as a creator who's been on YouTube for a long time, do you have any thoughts on how YouTube has changed and evolved? They were this young for the creator, for the audience company. Now they're more mature. Censorship is a big topic on YouTube, and if they should and shouldn't censor. So I think, with this podcast gets more listens on YouTube than on the podcast platform. A lot of the people are interested. Just do you have a take on YouTube's trajectory and growth and where it's been and where it's going and the censorship and all that?
I haven't thought too much about it. Like the censorship side of things was frustrating. So Wisecrack, as an example, wanted to move into history content. One of the really cool videos we made was about what we called the Hitler industrial complex, which was Hitler is good for business. So like it's good for views. People love it. So the History Channel is like nonstop specials on Hitler. You go on and on every single network. Like if you make Hitler content, you're going to be successful. So we made a video on the industrial complex on like, how did Hitler become the product? Like he is the Avengers of history.
That is a great sounding video.
It's an amazing video. It's so good. It got demonetized instantaneously because it had the word Hitler in it. Yeah. So YouTube pulled us aside and wouldn't let us record these phone calls. They wouldn't let us kind of screen capture these notes, but they walked us through effectively the censorship guidelines. Like, here's the things that we will not allow to be monetized. And so, of course, all of us in the background on Telegram are chatting like, this is nuts. Like, is YouTube legitimately saying these are topics that can't be covered? And this is history. So it's like, it's history. It's not like, so they say things like hate speech and blah, blah, blah. And we're like,
so to be clear, like you can't talk about hate speech. Like if I were to do if I did a what is hate speech,
the history of hate speech,
that would
you might be lucky with the censors. I think Hitler might be like a red flag, but for us, we took it as that, and
Wow.
we were upset. We were quite angry. We said, like, so this means that every history channel on YouTube now really can't cover anything that had any controversial history. Like, you can't cover genocides, you can't cover war, because war was also demonetized. You couldn't cover anything. So as a platform, like kind of in terms of manufacturing consent and Noam Chomsky and that whole world, it was like, wow, the platform is like I should say this, the advertising is going to determine the content.
Well, do they suppress the views or just demonetize? Because we did a video on OnlyFans, and because it had racy images, they didn't just demonetize it, they suppressed the views.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
so
kind of had both,
it was
I think.
crushing it. And then it was just like, no one will ever watch this. Was the Hitler video 3 million views, but just no money to you? Or was it like YouTube saying, no,
it was both. So it was both.
Watch this.
It was more like the latter. Like YouTube would. So YouTube claims that demonetized videos do not. So monetization does not have an effect on distribution. That might be true. In our experience, hasn't seemed to be the case. We've seen that when videos get demonetized, it tend to have less distribution. But I think what happened recently, maybe in the last 2 years, was that YouTube also then moved to like a rating. So a video would not only have monetization as a factor, but also what's its appropriateness? Like, does it contain, you do this when you upload your videos now, does it contain racy material? And I think Hitler, as an example, entered into both of those realms. It was both demonetized and not distributed. And so it just became incredibly upsetting when history was, in many ways, it was a very formidable and interesting vertical for us to approach. I mean, Wisecrack had covered history and had covered philosophy and cinema and psychology, and of course you'd cover history next. No. So that was a business decision that was frustrating.
I mean, I'm Jewish, and I think it's important that people learn about Hitler, because you can have a video that's like, hey, Hitler was great and this should have gone blah, blah, blah. But also, what about a video about how he rose to power and learning from it and the dangers of it and preventing future
and you do have some of those
by understanding it.
You're right. And you do have some of those on the platform that, like Ted Ed did a really cool video on Hitler's rise to power. These are all fairly new things. These are things that, as a result of major advertising pullbacks or the 2018 stuff, like these are all results. So to answer your original question, Ben, like it's just hard. Like like as a business person, I empathize with God. They have a very difficult business.
Has tough. Yeah.
Like difficult. They're a platform with millions of voices. So how do you police that? How do you keep it safe? Like now I'm working for a social media platform. That is huge on our agenda. Is like, how do we figure out trust and safety? Jared thinks that every social network should have an ethicist on standby, like full time, because there is. He said he likened it to like it's like having an oil company and having just had the BP spill. Like you want to have someone who's going to make sure they take care of that stuff environmentally. So running a social platform is super hard. So on the business side, I'm like, I empathize. On the creator side, I think it sucks. And it's like kind of like, again, I sit in the middle of the two and thinking it seems like, it's unfortunate. I don't know where YouTube is going. I don't know the answer to that though.
You mentioned that from your perspective, this is what advertisers will pull money from. So YouTube is reactive to revenue not coming in. Do you have any take? Because I wonder, is there any reason to believe that the brand association by being near a Hitler video is going to hurt sales or decrease the appeal of something? Or is that so there's other theories that I've heard, which you might not know the answer to, is that advertisers looking for a way to yank YouTube's chain and just be like, look, you can't raise rates on us. So, Hitler, we got to go away. Like they just are overly reactive more than they need to be to their bottom line in order to keep YouTube on a short leash? Or is it that there's a tiny vocal minority on Twitter that advertisers don't want to deal with and they're reactive to them? I'm trying to figure out where the root of this squeamishness is. And I'm not sure if you have any insight.
Know. I really don't know. My guess is that brands just want to be super safe. Like, I don't know what kind of, because Google is an amazing marketplace, I don't think that they're really going to be able to affect the rates by way of pulling out and pulling in and out. I just don't think that maybe it does. I mean, maybe it's a big enough sway that it does affect the prices. My guess is just that at its base level, like Kraft just doesn't want to have the risk of running in front of a Hitler video. And it's not the, like a good historical Wisecrack video on the history of the dangers of a character like Hitler is great. And if they took the time to say, okay, you know what? craft
okay.
singles can be advertised on this video. It's great. But they can't, as a platform with that kind of volume, they just can't do that. So my guess is probably just about, it's just so much safer to not place anything against Hitler. Because on the History Channel, they probably have dedicated teams, and clearly there's advertisers for that programming. They wouldn't run those shows if they didn't. But on YouTube, my guess is just that it's just too racy to pick and choose which political videos are safe and which Hitler videos are safe. My hope would be that they would be able to say, hey, this channel has earned a badge of being super safe. Yeah. Like, look, they've had no violations in 7 years. Like, give it to them. Like, they're going to be fine. But it's an automation thing. I don't know if you had the whole demonetization thing, whatever they called, like Adgate or whatever. What was that called?
I forget. Adpocalypse. It was
Adpocalypse.
Yeah. Where they pulled out and they dramatically affected ad rates for at least 12 months. I mean, it was serious. But you had one more question, right?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to give you a chance, if you want, to talk about what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, I'm working for a new amazing social network called HiHo. So I can't really talk much about it. We're still in stealth, but it's the investors include Tim Ferriss. So he's hopefully we're going to be one of his 5 billion X returns. So Tim Ferriss, Adam Grant, I don't know if you know Adam Grant, is on a TED podcast too. We've got just Chris Sacca, just incredible investors. The CEO is Greg Spiridelis, the guy who started Jib Jab and Storybots.
Can you tell us anything about like the one sentence, like what it is, or is it super duper stealth?
I'm going to give your audience the super sneak peek for the first time ever hearing about this thing, except for Ben. But it's in a sense, it is a video version of Reddit. So if you think about TikTok, if TikTok had an interest graph, so where you could talk about anything from charisma, performance, entrepreneurship, plants, science and technology, anything at all, business, anything at all you might be interested in. But there were the ability to have threaded asynchronous conversations in video form. That's what the app is going to be doing. And we've got people like Tim Ferriss and Adam Grant and some big YouTubers coming on already. And we're launching in March. So I'd love the chance for your fans to come on and try it out. But whatever. Yeah, I think it's a big opportunity.
Link, we can throw the link into the description. So let us know if there's like a wait list or something like that.
Sure. Sounds good.
Yeah, or we can also just link to it starting March 1.
I think
when it's ready, going to come out. Yeah, this is going to come out in February, early February.
We can try to time it with that. We'll try to time
that's
it.
True.
It's out today, everyone.
It's out today.
It's
now.
Out today.
I just think it's with the ability of what it allows to happen is quite cool. Like again, Reddit is amazing. I mean, the fact that you can search for kind of any topic and find interests and find experts is cool. The ability to do that in video form and get to actually see and hear who's talking is new and fresh and kind of an interesting take, given that we become so familiar and comfortable with video.
What's the use case? Because I personally for Reddit mostly use it for, at this point, like trying to figure out something. So I'm like, what's a good surfboard for a big person? So for me, the ability to skim quickly is an asset, I'd say, of text.
Yeah.
And then if I want to get video, I just go to YouTube. So not as a creator, but as a user, what would I go to HiHo for?
I think it's like the ability to actually, it's kind of like Twitter, it's access. So for me to actually ask you and Charlie questions and be able to directly hear your responses and see you as you respond to me, that's really the gem. Like that's the beauty, is that it's access to really interesting people. Like, so for example, the stylist, Beyonce's stylist is a good friend, and she's coming onto the platform. So she's styling, Gigi Hadid and Kendall Jenner and Beyonce. She's the creative and fashion director for Ivy Park. Really cool stuff. But no one ever gets to access to her, and she doesn't like Twitter. She doesn't like words. Honestly, she just said that words are kind of like not her thing. Yeah. She loves pictures and video. So she's just the ability to be able to ask her questions. She's going to use it to be able to say, hey, I want to create a lookbook of like the best boutiques in America. All of her fans can go out into the world and go film out their favorite boutiques, and she can stitch those together, and that becomes like a user generated community. So it's kind of like it's the ability to get access and find other like-minded people and ask questions and answer each other's questions. And I think also like a way to share expertise. Like I'd like to get my Zen teacher on there to answer questions with the Buddhism community.
Got it. So is it fair to say that whereas Reddit is more for the everyman, like I want to know what big guys surf. And so I'm just trying to find 50, 210 pound surfers and what they surf. This is more similar to Twitter, where they're not going to answer every question, but you might tweet at somebody, Kevin Hart, and actually get a response, which is there's no other way to get Kevin Hart to pay attention to you. This is a way to get Kevin Hart, or let's say Tim Ferriss is a more accurate example,
to make a video response.
Make a video to me about my specific question. And obviously he can't do them all because of a scale, but is that the best? It's like, I love Tim Ferriss. I have a question for him. This is my only chance to get a video personally done by him. Is that what it's for?
I'd say that's one of the benefits, right? Like that's the benefit on the sort of Twitter and celebrity use case. The other use case being for someone like Marnie. Let's imagine she wasn't a big stylist, but she happened to just be a user saying like, I love information, but I prefer video. I prefer to consume content that way. Mm-hmm. If forums can be more helpful in that way, great. Another example is, again, for plant folks, for people like people who have like a dying plant, I can be able to say, hey, this plant of mine is drooping. What do I do? You don't need to be a celebrity to answer that, but there might be really informed horticulturalists or plant experts on there to say, oh yeah, it's definitely your soil or your water. And so it's something that, again, an example in a use case where video and imagery is so much more important than text.
Got it. So it's a little bit of Reddit, a little bit of Quora, a little bit of YouTube,
a little bit of TikTok, a little bit of it's two parts this, 2 parts that. Interesting.
Yeah,
think of it it's a threaded video. Threaded video is the idea. So it's like, discussion boards and Reddit have been trapped in text. People are more comfortable with video than ever before. It's sort of a marriage of the two, and the interface is what's really clever as a way of us being able to make that kind of work in an intuitive way.
This is kind of a geeky question that maybe you guys haven't figured out, but it seems like a lot of, I'll just say TikTok, the newest exploding social media app, is completely built off the discovery algorithm, which is like, I don't need your words or interaction. I can tell by your human movements, which is creepy as hell. Like what things you'll watch for 3 seconds as opposed to 5 seconds as opposed to 20 seconds. How important is discovery to you versus search? Because obviously, like if questions are being answered, there's going to be a question answer thing. Are you guys looking at that TikTok experience of not even needing to click a thumbnail where you're just going to throw things at people? Or are you looking at threaded questions where you have to select, or is that still kind of up in the air?
No, we're looking at all that and all of it, from every single word that's spoken being transcribed and searchable and crawlable, exposure of that on webs, being able to do that in terms of SEO and search, but also understanding who you are, what you follow, what interests you have, and being able to serve the stuff that's most important to you. So algorithmically serving you content, like all that's super important. Yep. And if you're interested in like the TikTok side of things, like I'm reading a book now called Attention Factory, I think it's called, which is like the history of TikTok and ByteDance, which is fascinating book. So I'm ensconced in this world now. It's kind of my new life, and I'm just learning a lot and loving it.
That's awesome, man. Well, I will say Buddhism seems to be working for you, as does the sale. You seem like a very happy guy. And it's been a pleasure.
Dude. It's my record collection. It's my music.
Yeah, man. It's been a great chat. I'm glad that we got a chance to do this.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me, guys. It was awesome. It was really fun.
And everybody, if you want to check out HiHo, that'll probably be around now. If you want to join Patreon, that's in the description too. Peace.